Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions. Monday, new week, new theme. This one is all about bands with short names, 4 letters or less. Characters. Technically characters or less. I guess numbers are okay. I don't know if we'll have anything like that this week, but technically we're looking at characters. Today we're going to be looking at Yes, and in an interesting twist, but one that makes perfect sense for the channel, we're looking at a band with a short name and an exceptionally long track, so long that it takes up an entire side of a double album. We're going to be looking at the track Remix from Yes's Tales from Topographic Oceans, specifically looking at the Steven Wilson remix. This was selected specifically for this video. I always think it's really cool when we get these direct audio feeds straight from a vinyl. So let's dive into this and see what Yes is bringing to the table today. A lot of really nice touches to the guitar. The volume rises with each of the phrases on it. It's a lovely bass tone as well. Really interesting idea there with the vocals, the guitar, and the bass all leaning into this harmony. Yeah, that counter rhythm is nice. Very playful. Got the pedal tone droning down there. Field recordings of wind. Interesting transition. It's very joyful. There's a playfulness to it as well. It's just very positive, bright energy.
Cross our path and stay in there be a while. Let them run, let them chase, let them have between. Constant doors with open eyes, as life seems like a fire.
Yeah, moving bass line, counterpoint on guitar. Multiple vocal lines, harmonies now, but they were alternating before.
Maybe I'll just sing a while and then give you a call. Maybe I'll just say hello and say maybe that's all. Hurry home, as love is true, will help us through the night. Till we're coming home again, our life seems like a fight, as we look and use the passions that flow, as we try, we continue.
That idea comes up a lot at the end of a phrase, to just cut everything out and allow the vocals to do their own thing for a while. It almost feels like it enters free time too, or at least something opposed to 4/4.
Maybe we'll just stand a while, surely we can go. Dreams are sent to blossom courage, constant to the soul. Change we must, as surely time does, change is called the course. Held inside we
Got a little bit of a country flair down there, kind of bluesy with a twangy guitar. Yeah, that is not 4/4. love the dynamic range here. The width, the layering, the volume. There's a really interesting percussion sound over here. I'm not really enjoying it, and it is frequently used in this section. Where did this come from and where are we going? I will say this, there's been a lot of legato playing on the guitars all song. And it's typically really gorgeous.
Look me, my love, sentences move dancing away. We join, we receive as our song, memories long hoping away. Nous sommes du Soleil, hold me around lasting hours. We love when we play. Nous sommes du Soleil. Nous sommes du soleil. Nous sommes du soleil. Nous sommes du
Interesting. Um, so prog rock of the 70s. This is Yes, came out in 73. They do the two things I expect from this style of music from the era, and one is musical painting. There is some riffage in here. Usually, when we're in the more traditional sections, we have the vocals playing and stuff like that. But during most of the instrumental sections, it's painting. They're not really working too much within the realm of music theory. They're just saying, how do we describe this action in music? How do we make an auditory representation of this feeling or this idea? And two, it's a lot of auditory experimentation. Technology was expanding at the time and they were finding new ways to make sound, and we hear quite a bit of that in here. Not to mention, there's a ton of panning that happens throughout here. There's extensive use of what I am going to believe is a volume pedal of some sort. I don't know how early of a volume pedal this was. It had some roughness to it, and I don't know if that was part of the performance. Maybe they weren't used to using this thing, whether it was a pedal or not, or if it's just the way that it worked. Maybe it just controlled volume based on attack. So every note, as long as a note is playing, starts at zero. I don't know. I mentioned this at the beginning of how our opening guitar lines always swelled into themselves. Even if it was a series of notes, we swelled into it. The volume started at nothing and came up. It's it's a bit rough of a end result, but if this was some sort of precursor to the volume pedal, it makes sense having the limitations of technology there, but the concept is still that technology was expanding and they were introducing as much new sounds as they could into their music. Those are the two cornerstones to a lot of prog rock for me, especially prog rock of this era. And this song does both of those. So there are some sections that I find a bit rough, primarily because the ideas that they were working with, it was early technology and those concepts have been refined, and I'm used to something more refined. I wish that somebody would re-record it in a way, but at the same time that detracts from what they did. There's no way to perfectly recreate the vibe of this track unless you perfectly recreate the roughness of the track as well. So, I don't know. But being that it's word painting, or not word painting, musical painting, there's a lot of aspects in here that I just don't get, possibly without liner notes, or maybe when we hit the lyrics, things will make sense. Even just looking at the general flow of the track, we spend, like 11 minutes with this bright, happy, playful positivity. There's playfulness in many of the ornamental lines. There's a playfulness and a positivity in the chord progressions. There is a joy in the vocal deliveries, the harmonies. The whole song just oozes this almost childlike playfulness to it, almost a youthful naivety. Around minute 11 or 12, we dip into some of the gnarliest eerie music, especially since what they're using to make these sounds, I don't know what it is. It is just a very tense timbre that warbles a ton. It feels very alien. And in fact, when I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, so the song so far is a bunch of people playing on a bright hill in the summer, and then they get abducted by aliens. Like, that was my thought process. it was just a bizarre twist. And then we kind of pull out of that with another one of those fade in guitar lines that brings us back to a more positive but jaded uh, form of our opening 10 minutes. That leads us into a somber guitar solo that decides to shift to a new mode of ambiguity as its final 2 bars, 4 bars before we fade the song out. And that's what the song reads to me. And again, without liner notes, or eventually I'll check out the lyrics. I'm sure some of y'all will point me towards some liner notes in the comments later. I don't know what to make of this. It is joy and terror and jadedness and something. That's the series of emotions I went through listening to this. And I mean, that could vaguely tell a lot of stories. In fact, the first one I think of is just coming of age, the joyful childhood, the loss of innocence, the jadedness that comes from being a teenager and a 20 something, and then an ambiguous future. Where does this person go from there? I highly doubt that that's what this song is about. From the couple of lines I picked up and lyric lines that I picked up, and I mean a couple, I did not hear a lot of them. And the title of the song being Ritual, I really don't think that's the direction they're going in, but that's one way that this series of emotions could be applied. And not just emotions, but concepts worked into the composition as well, not just the harmonic components. So that's kind of where I sit right here is oh, and let's not forget that right before the really dark alien section was a bit of meandering from our bass and keyboard organ, I think. They both had a solo over a more somber section. And I mean, this leading into the eerie sci-fi alien stuff could easily be wandering through the woods and they get abducted. Like the whole alien thing still sits with me, but there's also the meandering of your early teenage years. And that kind of fits within that coming of age framework as well. So, yeah, I don't know. Until we hit the lyrics, I don't think my understanding of what they're aiming for is going to change much. But I do want to talk about a few of the things that I think they do very well before we get into the lyrics. First off, I mean, you guys know me. The thing that I'm always going to either harp on or praise is dynamics, and these guys nail it. Whether it's volume dynamics, I mean, even the idea of having the fade in or the slide in of the guitar. As rough as an execution it is here, I still really appreciate the concept of doing it. One of the cool things that I love about strings and horns specifically, aerophones, I think just do a fantastic job at this. Strings do it well also. But I think it just kind of comes with the groundwork of aerophones is the idea of rising and falling volume with notes. It matches breathing, which is the core way that these instruments are played. And that's something that we just don't hear too much of, especially today in rock and metal, is any sort of breathing of the instrumentation. We do get breathing of the composition with bigger and smaller sections and highs and lows of tracks overall, but the instruments are usually at a single volume, or maybe they jump between two volumes, one slightly quieter than the other, but we don't ever really have a sense of breath in rock and metal. And so I like how it's introduced here. The vocals do it a couple of times, but the guitars I think are the ones that do it the most throughout here, and it's just a really nice addition, even if it is, as I said, a bit of a rough execution of it. But we also have the volume of overall sections. And it's not just the loud section and the quiet section. We have a spectrum of volumes that we explore. We have dynamics in width and height, having more instruments, having a bigger sound sphere. It's just a very dynamic song overall. And while there are many sections that tend to just retain what they're doing and stick around with it for a while, overall, the song has a really nice ebb and flow to it. And I'm a huge fan of just putting dynamics into music. Um, the bass, I love the bass work. I love the bass tone. It's just a beautiful sound. And I'm going to chalk it up a little bit to Steven Wilson. When we've checked out Yes in the past, they have bass presence. A lot of 70s bands, prog rock bands, will include the bass in the mix, usually because the bass is doing something interesting, anyways. There's a lot of um, jazz inspiration. We have a lot of walking bass lines. We have walking bass lines in this track, too. But the bass is usually doing something. They're not just sitting on the pedal note like we hear so much today. Um, but Steven Wilson also really loves to pull the bass guitar higher into the mix, and I think its prominence here is definitely a little bit to do with Yes. At the time, it was very cool to have exceptional bass in your performance, in your mix, but also I think Steven just pulling it out a little bit more. I don't think it was too much. I don't think you can ever have too much bass. uh, but I do think if I listen to the original or a remaster that aims to keep the original mix, that the bass would not be as present. That's just a guess, though. But I love the bass tone. I love the ideas that the bass gets to play. It does counterpoint at times. It harmonizes. It does walking bass lines through several sections, and it has that extended solo throughout the middle of the track. Just a wonderful bit. The guitars, I talked about a lot of legato playing. On a guitar, I believe most legato playing is going to be done with exceptionally light picking, or more likely is hammer-ons and pull-offs, which allow for a smoother transition of notes than picking it. There's probably might be some finger no, maybe there's some finger picking in here in some places, but I wouldn't say it was prominently used because my gut reaction was just to correct myself. But that's another way to pull in some softer note changes, and that's all legato means. Where staccato is very sharp, do 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 do. Legato is very smooth, loo 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 loo. And the ultimate legato is slurring. Ooh. Slurring sounds dumb when I do it, but I'm sure professional singers could make slurring sound good. And it sounds fantastic on instruments themselves. And I guess a slurring on a guitar would be a slide from, one fret to another. Just move your finger up and keep it on the strings. Anyways, yeah, the guitar playing is just exceptionally smooth on this. There's a lot of legato attacks. It is just a joy to listen to, especially in the keys that they are and the melodies that they write within the keys. It's just beautiful writing overall and beautiful playing of them. Um, as far as like the keyboard goes, or the synth, or whatever they were using to create all these instrument sound or all these sounds. Again, I'm not sure of the tech in 73, so I'm probably using some of these words incorrectly. Nowadays, it would certainly be a synth or a keyboard doing them. But I've heard some crazy stories about some of these older bands and how they made the sounds they did. And if you know how they made some of these spacey, sci-fi, super warbly stuff, let me know, because I love hearing these stories, and it kind of helps me get a little more perspective on the creative process here. Like I don't remember if I said this earlier, or it might have been another video, but a lot of this stuff we take for granted. Nowadays, you load up a virtual instrument, you change a couple knobs, and bam, you have this super warbly sound. Sometimes it even comes prepackaged in it. And even when we're talking about a modular synth, as long as you know what you're doing, you get a couple modules, you put your cables together, you turn a couple knobs, and you got it. Um, they had to be a bit more inventive than that. So, yeah, I'm always amazed when I hear these types of stories, and I'm eager to hear how they created this one. But yeah, like I'm not gonna say that I fully enjoyed a lot of the sounds they created. There is this sort of experimental edge to a lot of the sounds that were coming out at the time. Everything outside of the typical rock sounds in this era, they're hit and miss for me. I have a modern ear, and I can appreciate the art and ingenuity that goes into it, but usually the sonic quality itself is going to be a bit lacking, and that's what's going on here. I think um, it's an interesting section. I think I would prefer it with a more modern take on it, which, like I mentioned earlier, it could ruin the entire idea of the song. I'm not saying it should be done, but it is a section of the track that I found bounced off of me a little bit, despite, again, my appreciation for the craft that went into making it. So I think that was most of the instrumentation that I enjoyed. The harmonies were great. Lots of cool vocal work. Great counterpoint throughout most of this. My one big criticism, which I may end up taking back after I know what the song's about, whether that's after I hit the lyrics or after some of y'all explain it to me in the comments, it is a long track. And it feels long. To me, that's a subjective note. It feels long, though. I'm sure some of you wish the song had gone on a little longer. Maybe some of you immediately want to hear the track before or after it? Is there a track after it? Where is... Oh, track listing. Oh, there's a bonus track. Oh, in the 2003 remaster. Otherwise, this is the end of the album. Oh, and the two bonus tracks are just studio run-throughs of songs already on it. So yeah, this is the last one on the album. Side 4 of a double album. These crazy folk. But yeah, anyways, I do feel like it lasted a bit long. There were a couple of sections in there that I felt meandered on just a bit too much. And, primarily the bass to organ solo, I think it was. That whole section just sort of, again, I think it was designed to put a visualization of meandering or being lost into the listener. It certainly worked at that, but it worked in a way that I think was counter to wanting to listen to more of the song, which may not have been their intent, but I definitely wanted to skip ahead a little bit at that point. And by the end of the track, I was waiting for it to end. The fact that there were so many different sections still left on the song after the return back to our brighter but jaded section after the weird sci-fi stuff, it was a bit much for me. I kind of would have liked that section to just taper off and be the end of it, but there was still like 6 7 minutes left after we got out of that sci-fi section, and I, at least in this setting, was I was a bit done with the track. Though some of that might just be the intentful listening that I do when listening to this stuff critically. Maybe as a more casual listening, I wouldn't have been so exhausted at that point and would have been fine to continue on. So with that said, let's dive into some lyrics, see what's going on here, see if we can pair any of it with the music, and see if my perspective of the track changes at all, knowing what their goals were when creating it. Lyrically, this song is a call for unity, love, and hope. The subtitle of the track, Nous Sommes du Soleil, is We Are of the Sun. That's what it translates to. And the opening section of the track just repeats that over and over, and a couple of times also states, "We love when we play," in English though. The idea of embracing the fact that we need sunlight, we need the brightness in our life, and I think that works both physically and figuratively, literally and figuratively. Many of the opening verses are just about enjoying life, um, embracing relationships, making connections with people, and enjoying what life has to throw at you, including some of the hurdles. Because a life without something to fight for isn't a life worth living. It even talks about taking risks or taking chances or even just taking things as they come. Just living life in a positive manner with the core intention of growing and expanding your horizons, both through your own experiences and through others as you make connections with other people and hear their stories. That's what I get out of the opening 5 verses, 4 verses, and a bridge and a chorus. It's fairly linear. We then have an instrumental break, which I don't remember which one that was. That takes us to verses 5 and 6. These are both about a specific relationship. It seems a you and an I. It talks about taking chances on dreams. It talks about wanting to stay with somebody, about wanting to find the mystery in life that keeps them going. Um, Interestingly, after this, though, we have our weird sci-fi interlude, and it feels just as odd here, even knowing what lyrics come around it, but maybe somebody will be able to clue me into their take of that in the comment section. Verse 7 goes back to the idea of being with people, holding today dearly, being present in your life, and looking to, again, expand your knowledge, not being complacent with what you are today, but always trying to improve yourself in a positive manner. And the song ends with Nous Sommes du Soleil. Once again, we are of the sun. A lot of the bright playfulness, I think, works well, especially in the first half of our track, since a lot of those lyrics are about accepting life with a positive attitude. That you should find things in life that make you happy. You should find, you should take risks. You should attempt to better yourself. You should make connections with people, expand your horizons, be out in the light. Light is another metaphor for being enlightened, for expanding one's mind. I think the whole song kind of having this bright, bouncy feel to it, very warm and embracing and inviting, works very well with a lot of the lines going on here. I do find it interesting then that we meander a little bit, but maybe that's also the point. Maybe not everything is a goal to achieve. Maybe sometimes just living life in the routine you are, not having a direct goal, as long as you're enjoying your time and making those connections, then that's good enough. That sci-fi interlude still confuses me though. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the end of the track is a bit more of a somber take musically on our opening section and ends a bit more ambiguously. It doesn't quite have that same determined brightness that we heard at the beginning of the track, so I don't know what to make of that. Overall, the track does feel like a journey and it is talking about life, and I think those two go hand in hand as well. In fact, I'd even say that my apprehension to the length of the track near the end could even represent some days that feel a bit longer than others, as the, I don't know, things just aren't going right, or your errands are just stacking up and you have so much to do ahead of you, and some days just aren't as good as others. And the song kind of leans into that as well. Not all days are great, but you just got to keep pushing on and find that brightness, that light to keep you going. Again, I don't think that was an intended aspect, but it works well with what they're engaging with lyrically. Those are my thoughts on Yes's Ritual. What are yours? Put your perspectives, opinions, and thoughts down in the comment section. And above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. Takes you to this menu. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. We have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to continue on with Short Band Names Week. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.